Today we're diving into a blueprint for a totally new kind of economic operating system. It's called Aureus. And no, this isn't just another crypto project. It's a really serious attempt to solve one of the biggest headaches in global finance, trillions of dollars in real-world wealth that are just completely stuck. So how to get it unstuck?
So the whole idea behind Aureus is to tackle what they call a fundamental paradox. And when you think about it, it makes perfect sense. Capital, money, it zips around the world digitally, instantly. But most of the world's actual wealth, things like buildings, infrastructure, private businesses, that stuff is stuck. It's trapped in these slow, clunky legal systems from like the last century.
And we're not talking small change here. The scale of this trapped value is just staggering. Projections show that the market for tokenizing these real-world assets could hit $16 trillion. That's how much wealth is sitting there being inefficient and illiquid, basically just waiting to be unlocked. I mean, solving this isn't a minor tweak. It's a huge opportunity, and it's the prize Aureus has its eyes on.
All right, so how are we going to unpack all this? We'll break it down into 5 key parts. First, we'll look at the paradox itself. Then, we'll explore the blueprint for this new economy. After that, we'll see how it tackles the huge problem of enforceability, meet the AI that's running the show, and finally, see how it all comes together in what they call the 4-pillar flywheel.
Okay, first up, that trillion-dollar paradox. Why is all this wealth locked up to begin with? And maybe more importantly, why has every other attempt to free it pretty much failed?
So here's the fundamental tension, right? You've got digital capital on one side, which is like water. It's fluid, it flows anywhere instantly. But then you have real-world wealth, which is more like a giant boulder. It's heavy, it's local, and it's trapped in this web of legal complexity. That massive disconnect, it's a huge anchor dragging on the whole global economy. And this, right here, is the real kicker. This is where other projects have stumbled. They call it the enforceability gap. And it's pretty simple, really. It's easy to own a digital token. But how do you actually prove, without a shadow of a doubt, that your little token gives you a legally binding claim to, say, an apartment building in another country? If you can't bridge that gap, big money just walks away. Trust disappears. And that is the exact problem Aureus was designed to fix.
So how does Aureus plan to actually build a bridge over that gap? Well, their solution isn't just a simple app or a single token, it's an entire economic blueprint, a whole ecosystem that's built on 4 powerful, interconnected pillars.
And this whole economy runs on a philosophy they call SOVEREIGNIZE. That's for sovereign and resilient finance. The point here isn't to chase short-term extractive profits. No, it's about building a system that puts you, the user, in control. And it's engineered from the ground up to not just survive market shocks, but to actually get stronger from them. In other words, it's designed to be anti-fragile.
And these are the 4 engines that make the whole thing go. It all starts by creating trust, which they call SOVEREIGNIZE. Then you create the assets themselves with TOKENIZE. Once you have assets, you create financial markets for them with MONETIZE. And finally, you create real-world uses for it all through SERVITIZE. Each piece feeds into the next, creating this powerful flywheel we'll get to in a minute.
Okay, now we're getting to the absolute core of this thing, how Aureus actually solves that gnarly enforceability gap. And they do it with a really interesting legal-first approach.
And the idea here is actually pretty genius. Instead of trying to invent some new global law from scratch, which, let's be real, is basically impossible, Aureus leans into the local laws that already exist and have worked for decades. It then fuses the power of those local laws with Switzerland's, super advanced and groundbreaking DLT legislation.
So let me walk you through how it works, step by step. First, you anchor the asset using a trusted local legal tool, like a specific kind of sales contract in Thailand called a Kai Fuck. Next, you transfer the legal title of that asset to a super secure bankruptcy-proof company in Switzerland. Then, that Swiss company issues its ownership as a digital token, which is fully recognized as a legal security under Swiss law. And finally, they partner with a regulated local expert on the ground to handle the physical asset. What you're left with is an ironclad, unbroken legal chain, all the way from a physical thing to a digital token.
And this is the aha moment. This is the whole ballgame. Because of that Swiss DLT Act, the on-chain token doesn't just represent ownership, it is the legal title. That means when you transfer the token on the blockchain, you are making a legally final and binding transfer of the actual ownership.
Just like that, the enforceability gap is slammed shut. The code literally becomes law.
Okay, so you've built all this incredibly complex legal and financial plumbing. Who, or what, runs it all? Well, that's where the AI Conductor comes in. It's basically the ethical brain and the central nervous system for the entire ecosystem.
Now, what's really different about this AI is that it has two core jobs. It has a moral duty to the whole system. Its job is to protect the health of the entire economy, kind of like a systemic immune response. But at the same time, it has an ethical duty to each individual. Its job is to protect every single user, ensure fairness, and provide support. It's this constant balancing act between the good of the group and the rights of the individual, and it's hard-coded right into its DNA.
Okay, so what does this AI actually do day to day? Well, it figures out more accurate prices for assets. It's constantly scanning for risks across the whole system. It automates all that boring but crucial compliance work. And get this is pretty amazing. It can actually identify borrowers who might be heading for trouble and proactively flag them for helpful, non-judgmental support. So the goal isn't just an efficient system, it's a humane one.
All right, last section. Let's put all the pieces together. How do the legal stuff, the AI brain, and those 4 pillars we talked about all lock into place? This is where we see the whole blueprint come to life as a living, breathing, self-sustaining flywheel.
It's this amazing self-reinforcing loop. It all starts when the TOKENIZE pillar creates a supply of high-quality, legally solid assets, with good assets on the books. The MONETIZE pillar can then provide deep liquidity and real-world yield. That financial activity then powers the SERVITIZE pillar, which creates real-world services and sustainable demand. And wrapping around the entire thing is the SOVEREIGNIZE pillar, that guarantee of user control, which builds trust, attracting more users and more assets right back into the system, spinning that flywheel faster and faster.
And look, the projected numbers show just how powerful this flywheel could be. The financial models for just the very first product show some serious growth, potentially scaling up into the hundreds of millions in revenue within just 3 years. It just goes to show how quickly an integrated system like this could start generating real value once the flywheel starts spinning.
Of course, you can't build something this big without a smart plan for the money. A proposed $60 million raise is designed to pour fuel on the fire. Most of it goes to tech and product development, actually building the system, and to marketing to get users in the door and start that flywheel. And crucially, a big chunk is set aside for all the complex legal and regulatory work that makes the whole thing possible in the first place.
So where is all this heading? What's the big grand vision here? It's a concept they call the usership economy. And the idea, powered by that SERVITIZE pillar, is a fundamental shift in how we think about, well, everything. It's moving away from the burden of direct ownership and moving towards simply having access to an asset's utility. Think living as a service instead of owning a house, or mobility as a service instead of owning a car. All of it enabled by this new financial plumbing. And that leaves us with a really big, thought-provoking question for the future. If we're really moving into an era where wealth is defined less by our jobs and more by the productive assets we own, then the single most important challenge is this. Who is going to build the tools to make ownership of those assets fair, transparent, and accessible to everyone? Aureus is one very ambitious, very detailed answer to that very question.